Hello and welcome to the Corporate Storytime Podcast series. My name is Lucas Robinson, the host of the podcast. On this pod, I'll get the opportunity to talk to ASX company leaders and innovators as they run through their personal executive journeys and the stories behind the companies they are helping to grow today. I'll be leveraging my experience as a former stockbroker and my current role with investor relations consultancy, Corporate Storytime. But enough of that. For now, let's gather round, come in close, and let me tell you a story. Thanks for joining us for the first edition of the Corporate Storytime Podcast. And I'm joined today by my old university mate, Justin Tremain. Justin is the Managing Director of West African-focused ASX-listed gold explorer Turaco Gold. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks, Lucas.
Sorry for my raspy voice, mate. I haven't been on the whiskey and cigarettes, but I don't really have the John Laws sort of radio quality going today, mate. So it's just a bit of a winter cold.
Bit of it going around.
Thanks, mate, for volunteering to be the first interviewee in this series. We hope it's a long and fruitful one, and we attract a large audience over time. So you've been a good sport to put your hand up for the first role.
Be the guinea pig.
Yeah. Now, Turaco are actively exploring for gold in the West African country Cote D'Ivoire, which is one of several countries in West Africa which hosts the gold-rich Birimian Greenstone Geological Belt. What can you tell us about the Birimian as a geological setting, and how prolific is it in terms of deposits already discovered?
Yeah, well, in my view, what we're after is world-class gold discoveries is our ultimate aim with Turaco, and in my view, there's no better place to be looking for world-class gold deposits than in the Birimian. I think there's already over 70 plus 1 million ounce discoveries within the Birimian. I think there's like 30 or 40 of those are plus 3 million ounce gold deposits, and then there's several, 10 to 20 million ounce truly world-class deposits.
And lots of those deposits are in production.
A lot of those are in production. Obviously Ghana and then of the last sort of 15 years, Burkina Faso is obviously seeing a lot of attention and had a lot of success, and a lot of mines developed there. And then Mali has got some, truly world-class deposits. So, we think I think it's the best place to be looking for large plus million ounce discoveries. And even though there's been that many discoveries, it's still, very underexplored relative to, say, Western Australia here. So, a lot of the ground that we have within Turaco now, which is a big package, we're drilling targets for the first time. There hasn't been one or two or three or half a dozen companies that have explored it before. We're the first to go and drill holes into very prospective geology. So that's what attracted us to it. There's no doubt it's probably the best geological setting in the world, very prospective rocks, and no one else has tested a lot of this stuff. And everywhere where you do exploration, you generate targets. Like, there's no question about that. And it's quite low cost exploration as well. You're not reliant on looking for deposits that are undercover or
pretty shallow
depth. So everything we're looking for will be sticking out of the ground. So as a result, it's pretty I'd say sort of basic but low cost exploration, where you're really just undertaking geochemical sampling programs, which don't cost a lot, and you can cover a lot of ground, and then generating anomalies and refining those anomalies, and then drilling it with shallow holes, right? So prospective and low cost exploration.
Yeah. But it's a good thing that you can cover a lot of ground, because you do have a lot of ground to cover. It's sort of around 8,350 square kilometres, making Turaco the largest landholder in Cote d'Ivoire, I understand. It's just about Cote d'Ivoire as a destination for a foreign mining company or an Australian mining company. We know, Perseus, a lot of the audience would be familiar with Perseus as an ASX-listed company with substantial producing gold assets in the country. Tell us a little bit about Cote d'Ivoire as a country, as a destination for investment.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting country. In fact, it's the most developed country in West Africa. So there's still a lot of French investment and a lot of French presence in the country.
So French-speaking country?
Yeah, French-speaking country.
And how's your French?
Petit français. Could do with some improvement there. But then I went through really probably almost 10 years of civil war up until 2010, 2011. And if you remember, that was actually a period where there was quite a strong exploration boom, if you like, in West Africa. A lot of money was raised and a lot of money went into West Africa, and majority of that money, I'd say, went into Burkina Faso, which at the time was a very stable jurisdiction and was seen as the sort of more stable part of West Africa, because Cote d'Ivoire had a civil war going on.
Yeah.
Places like Mali have always had some issues up in the north, and so a lot of that money went into Burkina Faso, and nothing really, or very small amount, went into Cote d'Ivoire, even though it's got we've got more of the Birimian that's been mapped in the country. And then, though, since, like Africa, things can change, and since 2012, it's actually become the most stable. It's been very stable for the last 10 years, the most stable jurisdiction in West Africa. And because it's the most developed, it's got the best infrastructure, which goes back to the sort of French days. Right now, in the last really, 5-6 years, they put a new mining code in place. And ever since then, it's really been seen as the preferred jurisdiction to be exploring for deposits, both from a government political support and stability point of view, and the financial arrangement to develop a mine, but then also because it didn't get that exploration focus that some of the neighbouring countries does. It's also considered to be the most underexplored and therefore prospective place in West Africa.
And I know, this isn't your first rodeo in Cote d'Ivoire. Can you just delve a little bit into your professional experience? And I'm not necessarily going all the way back to the university sort of graduation, but obviously, you've got some experience in the country through your position in the previous executive role that you had at Exor.
Yep.
But maybe just tell us a little bit about your professional experience, and maybe a little bit about the board as well.
Yeah, well, personally, I had a financing background, mining finance, with groups like Rothschild and Investec, and then in 2008, which is coincidentally that was the GFC time, so
a bit
of a changing career, and then
great time to be a broker.
Yeah. So that was sort of a bit of a career change for me, and then I got involved in exploration on the other side of the fence, if you like, and got involved in a project with quite a company that I'd sort of established with some other guys. We got involved in a project in Cambodia, which was an interesting sort of 7-year journey for me. Made a discovery and completed feasibility on a really great project, which has now actually been developed as in production. It's a 100,000 ounce per annum project. But that was the first mining project in Cambodia. So there was actually no mining infrastructure, no mining code or anything. So it was a very interesting and steep learning curve there, but very, very interesting. And then after that, then the opportunity sort of came to get involved in West Africa, which I'd always had an interest in, because you see the discoveries that companies have made there, and as I said,
breathtaking,
really world-class discoveries. That's where obviously massive shareholder value is created. And so got involved with which was a shell company.
And we can see that with some of the companies that have really rewarded ASX shareholders, such as Perseus, West African, Papillon.
It's a prime, that's an unbelievable discovery. Yeah, and as you said, Perseus and West Africa Resources have done a fantastic job in Burkina. So I got involved with a shell, and we put together we acquired some exploration ground in northern Cote d'Ivoire, and that company became known as Exor Resources. Yeah. And for me, it was quite refreshing, I guess, going into a jurisdiction that had established mining code, had several mines developed already.
So in comparison to Cambodia, it was pretty good infrastructure and established.
Everyone talks about Africa being Africa, but I found it like a bit of a breath of fresh air, to be honest. And so you had all the contractors and all the sort of legislation, and you weren't the guinea pig, and people had done it before. Yet the ground that you were exploring was basically untouched for exploration. And so we were lucky there. We had a discovery, which we called the Bagway project within Exor, and then we were able to raise some money, so we were able to do a lot of drilling very quickly. I think we did sort of 100,000 metres of drilling approximately in about 18 months. Period, and to find a reasonable maiden resource, and that discovery was not far from one of Perseus's operations called Sissingi, which was sort of running out of reserves. So they made a bid for the company, sort of, which was 18 months into our journey, I guess, quite quickly. And that was quite rewarding.
And that project isn't, I mean, we'll get to it, but it's not a million miles away from one of Turaco's projects, right? Bundiali.
No, it was actually through that experience that I became aware of some of the projects that are now in Turaco. And one of the projects is this Bundiali project. There's a few companies have Bundiali gold projects, but our Bundiali gold project is almost adjoins the old Exor project. Like it's just down the road. And, there was a company, that was the one project, I guess, that within Turaco that there's been some historical drilling, which was done by an unlisted company called Turaco Gold.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, and so we were familiar with what Toro was doing a few years ago at the same time as that we made the discovery within Exor, so that's how I was familiar with this project. So, so I had some experience in the country, and as I said, I found it a very easy place to operate, and just blown away by the opportunity.
And can you run through the bios of some of the other board members and key management as well?
Yeah, so John Fitzgerald's our chairman. So I used to work for John actually when I had in finance days at Rothschild Investec, so I got back a long way with him. And then he was the chairman of Exor. Yeah. But he also, he's a very high profile director and typically chairman on several resource companies, the largest of which was being Northern Star, which is, I'm not sure, but probably be one of the longest serving directors on the board of Northern Star. Yep.
Also the chairman of another Corporate Storytime client, Medallion Metals.
Medallion,
with the Ravensthorpe Gold Project.
Yep. Yeah, so he's, I think brings a lot of value to the board and is a good provides some good guidance. And as I said, I've got a sort of long history working with John.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
And we've got Alan Campbell, who's a non-executive director. So we mentioned Papillon, which is one of the unbelievable discoveries in the last 15 years in West Africa, the Fekola deposit. So Alan was the managing director of Papillon and was responsible for that discovery of Fekola, which I'm not sure what the resource is there now, but it's probably 10 million ounces.
Wow.
It's a massive discovery.
Huge.
So he's got a lot of success in gold exploration and experience in West Africa. And then our other director is Bruce Mowat, who runs the head of exploration for Resolute, or general manager of exploration for Resolute, obviously very active in West Africa. And so he came on the board because Resolute were a big shareholder going back a few months.
This might be a good time to actually talk about, how Turaco came to own these assets.
Yeah. So after Exor success, I guess, the CEO or the MD of Resolute at the time, he's no longer, but at the time John Wellborn sort of approached me, and they had this shareholding in a company called Manus Resources, which wasn't doing a huge amount but had a small presence in West Africa, and he sort of offered the keys to Manus to sort of reinvent it, I guess. And then, as I said before, I was familiar that Turaco Gold had this project on the Bundiali Belt, which had become a subsidiary of Resolute because they bought Toro, which was an unlisted company. And so on that approach, I sort of suggested to John, we'd be interested in bringing the same sort of team into this Manus, but we wanted Resolute's portfolio of exploration assets, which they largely inherited when they took over Toro. And they took over Toro for an operating mine in Senegal, and they sort of got this added benefit of this exploration.
The steak knives.
It was the steak knives. So, and they weren't doing anything on it. So I guess on his approach, we're familiar with some of the ground that they had, and so we suggested, we bring the same Exor team into Manus, rebrand it, which is now obviously Turaco Gold, but really on the basis of Resolute vending in all of its ground in Cote d'Ivoire on a very favourable terms for shareholders, which included Resolute at the time.
Yeah. Okay. So corporately, Resolute have since sort of moved off the register.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, it's no secret that that they sort of need the capital to I guess invest in particularly their Syama operation, which has been somewhat of an underperformer, and so as a result they're reasonably capital constrained. So they offloaded several of their non-core investments. A company called Orca Gold, which has now been taken over by Perseus.
Yeah.
Offload that, and around the same time, they offloaded their stake in Turaco.
Yeah.
Which, from my perspective, is a positive.
I think so. Yeah.
Because that was the.
It was a blocking stake.
Devil in the deal, I guess, was their shareholding allowed us to get this great package of ground very cheaply. Because it was going to have value to their shareholding, so that facilitated that. But then the next step was, I don't think it's not that great having a corporate on your register, because a lot of this is you want to make a discovery and that generates a lot of corporate interest, which is...
but it's my understanding Bruce has remained enthusiastic about the projects that Turaco's got and wants to hang around. And
so he was obviously there as their representative originally, but when they sold their stake, he and I chatted and he was keen to stay on. We were keen to have him because he's a great explorationist and knows West Africa very well. So he stayed on and he's a non-exec, but he really adds a lot of value and has a fair bit of input into our exploration programs and gets involved in interpretation of the results.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I know it's a bit of a tough day because the gold price had a bit of a horror show last night, dropping 2.5% or something.
Month,
but can you run through the sort of a quick corporate snapshot? Shares on issue, market cap, cash holdings, and that sort of thing at the moment, along with key major shareholders as they stand at the moment.
Yeah, so we've got just over 400 million shares on issue. About 427 million shares on issue. Share price, as you mentioned, has sort of taken a hit over the last month,
through no fault of your own. It's just general market.
So our market cap today would be sitting around just over $20 million.
Yep.
We're lucky to raise a decent swag of money Christmas time, raised $10 million, so we're well funded. We also had some money at the time, so today I think our cash position is still over $9 million.
Yeah.
We've been very active over the last couple of months. At one stage we had 5 rigs drilling, but at the moment we've got 2 rigs drilling. So we can manage our spend going forward.
Great. Okay, cool. Well, so, I mean, Turaco's got 4 main projects that you're concentrating on at the moment, 3 of them in northern Cote d'Ivoire and one of them in sort of central Cote d'Ivoire, which is the Birimian project. Just sort of concentrating on the northern sort of assets. I suppose, Bundiali, as we mentioned earlier, is the one that you inherited that had probably the most work done on it by Toro.
Yeah.
Talk us through what's going on at each of these projects and, what you've been able to achieve so far, and what you're hoping to sort of, get done over the course of the next 6 months or so.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, there's 4 key projects, albeit we've been active on only 3 of those key projects, 2 of which are in northern Cote d'Ivoire. So the Bundiali project, which was a project that Turaco Gold had done most work on, had made a discovery called Nine Buoy, and that discovery sat within a 7-kilometre gold in soil anomaly, a sort of plus 50 ppb gold anomaly. And then within that 7 kilometres, there was about a kilometre of strike of higher tenor soils, which Toro had done some shallow, like 50-metre drilling on.
Yeah, and this is around 2017, 2018?
Yeah, 2016 to 2017.
Yeah.
And, it got some pretty spectacular results just in the top 50 metres in the oxide zone of sort of 20 metres at 10 grams and 30 metres at 8 and 28 at 4 grams per tonne. So,
that's pretty eye-catching stuff.
Of width, but that's some pretty good grades. But then they never took it any further because they, sold the company to Resolute. So they drilled about really 600-700 metres of strike there, and that remained completely open. So we've been doing some drilling on that testing for extensions at depth, and we've demonstrated the mineralisation extends into the fresh rock, and that sort of results like 9 metres at 8 grams in fresh. There, and we've also been stepping out and drilling it along strike and showing that's open. So we just recently had some more diamond results from that. So that's a discovery which is essentially at resource definition stage, but we obviously want to grow the scale of it before we put a maiden resource on that. And then our second, and there's some regional targets as well within that project, within sort of a 10 kilometre radius. But that sits on the Bundiali belt, where we obviously have experience with XOR resources and
Antoinette's sort of the
and
northern.
There's a series of discoveries along this belt that's been made over the last 5-6 years by obviously XOR, starting with Perseus up in the north, and then XOR, and then Barrick have a couple of discoveries.
Is Syama actually on that belt?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
In Mali,
It's 11.5 million ounce resource. So,
that's right.
It's a pretty prolific belt.
So the view is in Cote d'Ivoire, given you've got a deposit like Syama on the same structures in Mali, that exploration on this belt could yield a similar type of discovery, a scale of discovery. And what's been discovered at the moment is, everyone's who's explored on the belt has made a good discovery of sort of million ounce or 500,000 plus ounce discovery.
Wow.
So that Barrick's made a couple. Obviously XOR made one, and then we've got this 9 buoy one in our project, and then further to the south, a company called Montage Gold. Actually, they've got about a 4 million ounce discovery called the Coney deposit.
The Coney deposit, right.
So it's
all right. So what's happening? What's the work program there at the moment?
We just finished a round of drilling. We're sort of entering into the wet season now, so we're just going to be doing some auger drilling on some of those regional targets to generate a bit more scale to the project over the wet season, and then resume drilling after the wet season, which will be November, December there.
Okay.
And then our second project in northern Cote d'Ivoire is the Tonga North project, which is our earlier stage exploration package, but on great geology.
It looks to be strategically positioned between two pretty big mining operations.
You got sort of the Tongan operation, which was one of the first mines developed in Cote d'Ivoire. That's Barrick's project, does about 200,000 ounces per annum. So we've basically got all of the greenstone strike extensions from Tongan up to the Burkina Faso border, and then on the other side of the border there you've got what is now Endeavour Gold's what they call the Wanyan operation, which is a few million ounces as well. That was previously Teranga, and before that originally Griffin Minerals. So we've got 1,500 square kilometres of contiguous exploration ground here.
And are you the first company? All right, so it's only had one drill program prior to your. Wow.
There was one drill program. So there's a lot of soil geochemistry, which finds some really big anomalies, and there'd been a bit of like auger on that had confirmed in situ mineralisation, and then no further work. So we're systematically going through and testing these targets with auger drilling and then shallow air core drilling, and we've just drilled one of those targets, which we call Natogo, which was it's a 5 kilometre anomaly, but that's growing as we do more work on it, along the contact of the greenstone and the granite, and along the same structures that are associated with Tongan, and the several deposits that make up the Wanyan project in Burkina Faso. So very fertile structures, great soil anomalies. So I'm sure we'll have exploration success there, and we're just systematically testing several targets there.
And at Abernia, which is sort of further to the south in the centre of the country, you've got sort of two pretty exciting prospects there that you've worked up basically from scratch. So
these, we call it the Abernia project. It's made up of 2 permits, which we call the Buaki North permit and Satama permit, and there's only about 10 kilometres between the 2 permits, so they're sort of one and the same project. But there'd been no work done on these on both these permits by anyone. Past. I mean, the Buaki North was an application that Manus, so the previous name of Turaco, had put in and got granted probably 18 months or so ago now. So there's just been work done by Turaco over sort of geochemistry, just typical exploration in the Birimian, sort of stream sediment sampling, geochem, some airborne magnetics, that's defined a lot of anomalies, and we've been drilling one of those, which we call the Buwaki North prospect. That's a big 7 kilometre anomaly.
Yeah, I caught a pretty high grade hit announced there the last week.
Last results. I mean, we put out several results, but 3 metres at 35 grams per tonne.
Yeah,
just from reconnaissance drilling there.
It's not bad.
So if you had results like that in Western Australia, you'd get a fair bit of traction.
Yeah. You
obviously the
take that every day of the week.
Fairly high in West Africa. So that's one project, and then the other permit is the Satama permit, which Resolute had done just some wide-spaced regional geochemistry on that to find this sort of shear zone that had anomalous gold in soils. And so since we've had this ground, which is less than 12 months, we've been just doing auger, air core, and some RC drilling on that. We've done quite a bit of drilling on that. We've got a lot of results to come. We've got over 7,000 samples in the lab.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so
there's plenty of news flow, in the pipeline.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And that'll keep your news flow active over this sort of wet season period, and then get all those results through, crank up again when the ground dries out, and you've got plenty of cash reserves to really execute.
Yeah,
on these
and
plans.
The intention is to continue active during the wet season. I mean, we're already in the wet season. Wet season sort of runs up until October, but we'll plan is to continue drilling activities during the wet season, just not on the same scale that we had been doing up until now, but still drilling. So we've got a lot of assays to come from the drilling we've done, and there'll be continuing filling that assay pipeline. Yeah, so Satama, we've defined gold now over 3 kilometres of strike in the top 100 metres there. So with wide space drilling, so it's now a matter of just infilling. That's exciting. Focusing on some of the better grade zones. We've just done an IP survey over 4.5 kilometres of strike there, including the 3Ks that we've drilled, which will allow us to better target future drilling for some of the higher grade zones, hopefully.
Right.
So once again, that's no doubt that's a discovery, and arguably that's a resource definition stage.
Right. That's pretty mature for something that you've only been working on for 12 months or so.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of shows the opportunity in West Africa. I think is you can go from a soil anomaly to a discovery within 12 months, like a big discovery. Yeah. Which, and several other companies have demonstrated that as well over the last few years.
And then the fourth project, which you haven't done a lot of work on yet, but there is a quote unquote discovery on it that Toro made, is the Furky.
Yeah, so that's the Furky project. It's actually called Furky Dugo Duso, but
okay, let's keep it Furky.
Yeah. But so the Furky project was which actually within the Toro portfolio is probably the most exciting project. But it just had one phase of drilling that Toro did literally in the last few months before Resolute, the owner of Toro. And
so what's taken you so long to get around to it then?
Well, it's on the border of Burkina, and on the other side of the border of Burkina, there's in Burkina there's a forest area there, and so obviously it's well publicised the sort of security issues that are going on in Burkina over the last couple of years. And so our view is
there's more than enough on your plate with the other stuff.
Yeah. But we hope to start work on that after the wet season, subject to being comfortable with the security position there. But there was a discovery made by Toro. They drilled 18 holes and they had sort of 50 metres of mineralisation across most of those holes at 2 or 3 grams per tonne.
Yeah.
So
right.
It was pretty spectacular. Results, I think, at the time. So it's a predictive discovery. Have 11% of was our joint venture partner on Bundiali and Furky.
Yeah, they've shown what you can do as a small company in West Africa, haven't they?
Yeah, and then when Toro had these drill results back in 2019, I think it was, they had 25% of the JV at that point predictive, and I think their share price went up a few times, basically, on the minority interest on these results. So it was a pretty exciting discovery that hasn't been followed through, so we hope to get on ground there and start testing our fourth project in sort of towards the end of the year.
Right, brilliant. I mean, you can just see so much optionality and leverage for a company that's due to no fault of your own is now attracting a market capitalisation of 20 or an EV of sort of 10 or 11. I mean, I just think it's a really, and I must admit I'm a shareholder myself, so I'm speaking with a vested interest, but I really think that there is just a huge amount of upside technically and from a a capital appreciation point of view.
Yeah, share prices have been sold off, very light volume. We've got some great shareholders. I mean, you sort of asked the question. We've got a lot of our registered, a lot of our top 20 shareholders that have supported the team in Exor and before that Renaissance in Cambodia. So they're long-term supporters of ours. And then we've got like Sprotter on there now. They're a 10% shareholder. Obviously, one of the best institutional investors in North America to have on your register.
It's a really big technical tick to have them on board, I'd say.
Yeah, so share price over the last month, I mean, it's just the market conditions, but it's been sold down on quite light volume, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, mate, that's great. I mean, thank you so much for taking the plunge and being our first subject in what we hope will be a long and very well listened to podcast series. This chat's done nothing but sort of reaffirm my enthusiasm for Turaco as an investment proposition. All the best with all the exploration activities, mate, in Cote d'Ivoire. It's a great country, and you've got some fantastic opportunities there. So, thanks to So, do you want to have any parting comments?
Mate, thanks for giving me the first opportunity to be part of the first Corporate Storytime podcast.
It may be a smallish audience to start with, but we're gonna like the Turaco market capitalisation. We're going to build from a small base and make something really big out of this. I'm
thanks
sure.
for the opportunity to be part of it, mate.
All right. Thanks to all the listeners who have got this far. You've made history. Please tell your friends about us and subscribe for more of the same from the Corporate Storytime Podcast. Thank you.